What do you think, Doc? Can you save her?
I just don't know yet.
Hey there, I'm Dan, the self-proclaimed Lonely Rocker. Thank you so much for joining me today. So we have a special guest in the studio today. Marco, you've seen this guy several times here on the channel. So the reason he's here today, the continued saga of the Schecter C1 SLS Elite. He recommended this guitar to me, which I purchased, and I've had a few issues with it. If you've been following along, I have several videos about basically what's happening with this guitar. I'll put some links in the description if you want to check that out. But the main issue for me is tuning stability. I have replaced the tuners, and that was the last thing that I did. And after I changed the tuners, I didn't set it up again, and I was getting frustrated again with tuning, and I realized that I need to give it one more chance. It needs a proper setup. And that's why Marco's here, because Marco actually does work on guitars. He's pretty good at this. If you're in the Toronto area, and if you're looking for someone that can set up your guitar, just hit me up in the comment section and I can link you. So what the plan is today, a couple of things. We're gonna see if we can get this Schecter into game shape. And another part of the story is I have to mention Stringjoy sent me a bunch of their strings because they want me to try it out. I've been very loyal to my string brand for longer than I care to mention. And I know Marco is a big fan of Stringjoy. So we have a curated collection of strings here, one of which was highly recommended for drop C tuning. So that's what we're gonna ultimately put on the Schecter here. So anyways, Marco is gonna take us through the steps. If you want sort of the basics in setting up your guitar, things like intonation and string height and all those kind of things like that, he's gonna walk us through sort of the basics and in the process see if we can salvage the Schecter C1 SLS Elite to see if we can get her back into service.
So every time I get a new guitar brought to me where someone has complaints or issues with it, I'll listen to those complaints and then I'll start playing it a bit to get a feel for how it is at the moment. And as the moment right now, I've noticed that these strings do have a fair amount of grooves under them from being played a fair amount. Dan has also noted that after the guitar was set up, he did change the tuners again. So that kind of pretty much undid that setup. So it's going to need to be set up again, which we'll go over in this video. And hopefully after that's all done, these tuning stability issues will be addressed. If they haven't, we'll see what might be causing those tuning stability issues. So I'm going to take the opportunity today to take advantage of a luxury I don't normally have presented to me by being able to try another guitar, because Dan loves this already. So it gives me a reference point of how to set up the Schecter to be, obviously it's not going to be exactly the same, but it gives me a reference point. So if you're just getting started on your own setups at home, here are just some basic tools you'll need. Some type of string action guide, you can get these at any music store, feeler gauges, good set of strings, some type of Allen key set. I just happen to have this Ibanez multi-tool here, peg winder, clippers, capo, and then some type of mineral oil, lemon oil for the fretboard conditioning. And these are pretty much all the tools that you'll need every day just to get your guitars playing the way they ought to. So what I'm going to do now is just de-string the guitar and give it a basic conditioning of the fretboard and general cleaning in areas that might be really annoying for me to try and clean when the strings are on the guitar, unless I have like some fancy tool. Put on some really nice high quality strings from Stringjoy. It would be a big shame to go through all this trouble, do all this work, and put suboptimal strings on your guitar. A really good set of strings makes the world of difference when it comes to proper guitar setup and sound quality. Don't tell Dan. I'm gonna use the purple blade for this special unboxing of these Stringjoy strings. Another thing I love the most about these Stringjoy strings, they're packaged really nicely. Like the box is really nice to just throw waste of cut strings and stuff inside, and also them all covering in these little sealed plastic things. Make sure the strings are nice and fresh when they come out of the packaging and they're not too stale. Like some other brands I've experienced, they're all like wound together in this big clump. It's kind of annoying to kind of get them all undone. And some people I've experienced, as they're unraveling that rat's nest, they damage one of the strings, like they kink it accidentally or something. And something like this, just make sure that can't happen. Plus the strings, they stay nice and fresh on their way to you from wherever you are in the world, because these do ship from Nashville. And yeah, it's a nice peace of mind. I'm tuning on the world's most expensive tuner, the Fractal FM9. It's a great tuner. It does some other stuff too, but I don't really care about that right now. Don't have to be too precise either. Just close enough for rock and roll for now. Even just putting new strings on, the guitar's already holding tune a lot better. And I mean, granted, this is before the final stretch, but even still, like, you know, some of these strings I barely have to touch. Yeah, so now I'm just gonna tune the guitar up in playing position, check the relief. Each guitar, each brand has their own spec factory requirements that they deem as acceptable for their guitars. Schecter's, I believe, is about 10,000ths of an inch off around the 8th or 7th fret, around the middle of the neck. Because how these necks are designed, inside them there's this big rod. It doesn't really adjust the angle of the neck, it adjusts how much the center like bows, if it's concave, or just making it more clearance for the string when you play it. I tend to measure them around the 6th or 7th fret by pressing down at the 12th and at the 1st using a capo, which we'll show you how to do in a sec. Some people have this notion that to change string height, it's just relief. Relief is more about like clearance of the frets as you're playing, because you don't want too much relief, because now you're going to be pressing the string out of tune because the neck is too bowed. And you don't want too little relief because then the neck is going to be too straight. Something I want to hammer home is the guitar is not a perfect instrument. This thing's going to have some weird nuances and idiosyncrasies that are going to be different for each guitar. Even of the same model, they might be a little bit different. There are some things you might have to just put up with. They can be alleviated a bit with the setup, but some things also just come down to how you're playing, how hard you're hitting, how hard you're fretting, how you're holding the guitar sometimes. Yeah, that's just something to note as we get into the intonation part too. I'm just going to put it on the 1st fret, and then I'm going to take this feeler gauge. Okay, so I'm going to go for 6,000ths of an inch for my own preferred spec. I will press down at the 12th fret, use the string as a straight edge for this instance, and measure around the 6th fret. So you want the feeler gauge to be like just touching the string. Right now it's not moving at all, and I can see there's a gap. So given that, I'm just gonna tighten the truss rod to make it straighter.
There is a simple saying to help you remember which way to adjust the truss rod. Lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. So right to tighten it and left to loosen it. Some guitars have the truss rod access in the headstock, but the Schecter has a spoke wheel adjustment at the end of the neck where it meets the body. But the same rule applies. Right to tighten, left to loosen. Another reference point would be to turn it towards the low E string to tighten it and towards the high E string to loosen it. If there's too much of a gap between the frets and the string, you would tighten the truss rod to bring them closer. Loosen the truss rod if the strings are too close to the frets. And the tool you would use depends on your guitar, but most kits come with different sized tools to accommodate different guitars. Don't force it, and make sure you are using the correct tool. And don't be afraid to ask at your retailer or wherever you're purchasing your tools. Marco used the feeler gauge after making adjustments and continued to tune the guitar until everything was set to his liking. And mine.
Next, we're going to move on to action, where I'm going to set the actual string height. Thankfully, this guitar has a hip shot bridge, so I'm going to be able to adjust the string heights individually, as opposed to a guitar with a Tune-a-Max style bridge or even a Floyd Rose. Those guitars, the action is going to be adjusted by the posts. You're going to have to make some sort of compromise with both those guitars. In certain instances, they're also pre-radiused, so you're going to have to make sure if you're doing any sort of modifications to your guitar for those bridges, that they're the appropriate radius for your specific guitar. Treble side being these 3 strings and bass side being these 3 strings, being their own separate heights. Most of them are going to be about 4/64ths off the 12th fret for the treble strings, and then 5/64 on the bass side. I like these gauges a lot. Some people will have these like, and I didn't bring one on me, but these like little rulers. Those are horrible because you can't use like the other frets to keep it straight. With that one, it can like wobble, so you kind of get wacky measurements with that thing. For the thin strings, the string should be like on the line of the measurement. So like, you don't want the line to be like just underneath the string. You want the string to be like on the line. Right now, the guitar is at about 3/64. This one's a little under 3/64, so I'm just going to adjust that. And this one needs to be adjusted too, but yeah. And then for the wound strings, you want the line to just be like just peeking out from the winds. Pretty much like just when you start to see the line, I don't know if you can see that. You just start to see the line for the 4, that's when you can know that you're in the right area. Yeah, this string needs to come up a bit. It's a little too low. And then, yeah, I'm just going to adjust them all now, and then you'll see the product after the fact. So now that we've adjusted action, we're going to move on to intonation. This is one of our final fine-tuning adjustments we're going to do on the guitar.
From a playing position, Marco proceeded to check the tuning on each string one by one. Starting with the low E string, he tuned the open string, then fretted at the 12th fret and checked the tuning again. If the fretted note was sharper than the open string, then the saddle for that string was moved back. If it was flat, the saddle was adjusted forward. He did this on every string until all open notes were in tune with their corresponding 12th fretted note.
So now that we've gone through all the fine-tuning adjustments, we're going to do our final stretch and final tune. I'm going to put it back in Dan's hands, and he'll let me know how badly it plays.
All right, so I've had a chance to play this a little bit. First of all, thank you for taking the time to do this. One thing that we did notice, or Marco noticed, is that we're getting a bit of string buzz on the low E, and you were saying because probably this was filed, the nut was filed a little too low.
Yeah, if played open, the thickest string will rattle a bit. Sounds like it's banging on the first fret, and as I was measuring it, it is resting on the first fret. Ideally, should have clearance of about 1/64 of an inch, maybe a little higher than that on the thicker strings because they're a little bit bigger when you get to these guys. Like the height being the distance from the top of the first fret to the string should be about a 1/64, maybe a bit higher for these ones. But yeah, it's just a little too low. It's an easy fix to raise it. It's just I don't have the...
Well, for the sake of time, too, I mean, he's going to have to fill it. We'll let it dry. And for the sake of this video, he's going to take a look at this later on. But it's not affecting the tuning, it seems, so far. Just like a little buzzing. Whenever the last set that I had done, I actually had it set up for drop C, so he would have had to have filed the nut.
Yeah.
It's an easy mistake, and it's an easy thing to fix. So we'll address that later on. But aside from that, first impressions. Now, I don't want to be overly dramatic. Oh, it's amazing. It's the best thing I've ever played, because it does take time. Let's be realistic with the guitar. You got to put this into battle.
Yep.
I record, I don't play live, so I'm very sensitive to tuning because I hear it, especially multi-tracking and things like that. You'll start to notice things a little bit out of tune. But in terms of playability, from first impression, I'm big about first impressions because I'll know right away if a guitar doesn't feel right, especially if I'm in a store and I'm trying something. It's like, it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So this is a guitar that I know, right? It's my guitar and it feels really good. String from my trusted brand of strings, having a new set of strings on here, a different brand. We've got the String Joy on here. Everything feels great so far. I'm not feeling anything foreign to me. Everything is new, obviously, new, fresh set of strings. It's always everything's so shiny and bright and everything like that. So,
nice and snappy.
But my early tests are some of the challenges I had in tuning. I noticed them down low with some of that chugging stuff, and it felt pretty good. Again, once I start recording with this again, I'll see what happens there. And I know sometimes I have to make adjustments for playing, and I'm a pretty heavy-handed player, and I do tend to put the guitars out of tune sometimes. So, but overall, I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, before all of this, I literally was taking pictures of it, and I was going to sell it. So I think we're going to hang on for a little bit. I really do like this guitar a lot. I love how it looks. The playability is just amazing. And if we can just get it to that point where it's staying in tune, I just want it to be a solid recording machine. It's the only guitar I have properly set up for drop C.
Yeah.
So it really needs to do its job, and I'm hoping it will. But right now it feels pretty good. So anyways, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise. I have to thank Stringjoy. I'm going to pop them on some more of my guitars, but so far it feels pretty good, and really excited to get them on some of my other guitars. We have all sorts of different gauges here. They have the 9.5 to 46.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool set.
Which is, I know, is kind of a new kind of thing, a little light. I might pop that on the Sir Classic T. I'm thinking that might be a good guitar to test that one.
One of my coworkers really likes 9.5s to 44. I mean, I don't really. I much prefer that the optimized string gauges that Stringjoy offers, just because, like, I don't know, the grandfather gauges are not the best for optimized tensions and tunings. So this is very appreciated that they offer these.
So I'm going to give that a try on some of my other guitars, and we'll see how that goes. But so far, feeling pretty good. So I want to thank Stringjoy so much for providing the strings for this video, and we'll definitely be seeing them on some of my other guitars. Anyways, Marco, once again, thank you so much. Hopefully you got something out of this. If you do have any questions, any thoughts, why don't you put them into the comment section? Always happy to hear from you. If it's something I can't answer, I'll see if I can get a hold of him, see if he can help out. But that's what the comment section is for. But if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And while you're down there, yes, the growing trials and tribulations of the Schecter C1 SLS Elite. I've talked about the problems ad nauseum. If you've missed that, I'll pop one of those videos right here if you want to check it out. And remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll. I'll catch you in the next one.
Maybe not me.